17. Ahithophel said to Absalom, I would choose 12,000 men and set out tonight in pursuit of David. I would attack him while he is weary and weak. I would strike him with terror, and then all the people with him will flee. I would strike down only the king and bring all the people back to you. The death of the man you seek will mean the return of all. All the people will be unharmed. This plan seemed good to Absalom and to all the elders of Israel. But Absalom said, Someone also hush the arcade, so we can hear what he has to say. When Hushai came to him, Absalom said, Ahithophel had gone and given this advice. Should I do what he says? If not, give us your opinion. Hushai replied to Absalom, The advice Ahithophel had given is not good this time. You know your father and his men. They are fighters and are as fierce as a wild bear, robbed of her cubs. Besides, your father is an experienced fighter. He will not spend the night with the troops. Even now, he is hidden in a cave or some other place. If he should attack your troops first, whoever hears about it will say, There has been a slaughter among the troops who follow Absalom. Then even the bravest soldiers, whose heart is like the heart of a lion, will melt with fear, for all Israel knows that your father is a fighter and that those with him are brave. So I advise you, let all Israel from Dan to Beersheba, as numerous as the sand of the seashore, be gathered to you, with you yourself leading them into battle. Then we will attack him wherever he may be found, and we will fall on him as dew settles on the ground. Neither he nor any of his men will be left alive. If he withdraws into a city, then all Israel will bring ropes to that city, and we will drag it down to the valley until now not even a piece of it can be found. Absalom and all the men of Israel said, The advice of Hushai the Archite is better than that Ahithophel, for the Lord has determined to frustrate the good advice of Ahithophel in order to bring disaster on Absalom. Hushai told Zadok and Abiathar the priest, Ahithophel had advised Absalom and the elders of Israel to do such and such, but I have advised them to do so and so. Now send a message immediately and tell David, Do not spend the night of the forced in the desert, cross over without a fall, or the king and all the people with him will be shallowed up. Jordan and Azaz were staying under Ergologo. A servant girl was to go and inform them, and they were to go and tell King David, for they could not risk being seen entering the city. But a young man saw them and told Absalom. So the two of them left quickly and went to the house of the man of Bethlehem. He had a well in his courtyard, and they climbed down into it. His wife took a covering and spread it out over the opening of the wall, scattered the grain over it. No one knew anything about it. When Absalom's men came to the woman at the house, they asked, Where are Amos and Jonathan? The woman answered them, They crossed over the brook. The man searched but found no one, so they returned to Jerusalem. After the man had gone, the two climbed out of the well and went to inform King David. They said to him, Set out and cross the river at once. Ahithophel had advised such and such against you. So David and all the people with him set out and crossed the Jordan. By daybreak, no one was left and had not crossed the Jordan. When Ahithophel saw that his advice had not been followed, he saddled his donkey and set out for his house in his hometown. He put his house in order, and they hanged himself. So he died and was buried in his father's tomb. David went to Mahon, and Absalom crossed the Jordan with all the men of Israel. Absalom had appointed Amasa over the army in place of Joab. Amasa was the son of a man named Jether, an Israelite who had married Abigail, daughter of Nash and the sister of Jerah, the mother of Joab. The Israelites said Absalom camped in the land of Gilead. When David came to Mahon, so Shobi, son of Nasher, from Rabbah of the Amorites, and Machir, son of Amiel, from Lo-debar and Barasol and Giddis. From Lugalim brought bedding and bowls and articles of pottery. They also brought wheat and barley, flour and roasted grain, beans and lentils, honey and curds, sheep and cheese, from cow's milk, from David, where David and his people to eat. For they said the people had become hungry and tired and thirsty in the desert. 18. David mustered the men who were with him and appointed over them commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds. David sent the troops out, a third under the command of Joab, the third under Joab's brother Abishai, son of Joras, and a third under the later Gitti. The king told the troops, I myself will surely march out with you. But the man said, You must not go out. If we reverse to flee, they won't care about us. Even if half of us died, that they won't care, but you are worth 10,000 of us. It would be better now for you to give us support from the city. The king answered, I will do whatever seems best to you. So the king stood beside the gate where all the men marched out in units of hundreds and of thousands. The king commanded Joab, Abishai, and Ittai, Be gentle with the young man Absalom for my sake. And all the troops heard the king giving order concerning Absalom to each of the commanders. The army marched into the field to fight Israel, and the battle took place in the forest of Ephraim. There, the army of Israel was defeated by David's men, and the castles that day were great, 20,000 men. The battle spread out over the whole countryside, and the forest claimed more lives that day than the sword. Then Absalom happened to meet David's man. He was riding his mule, and as the mule went under the thick branches of a large oak, Absalom had got caught in the tree. He was left hanging in midair, while the mule he was riding kept on going. When one of the men saw this, he told Joab, I just saw Absalom hanging in an oak tree. Joab said to the man who had told him this, But you saw him, why didn't you strike him onto the ground right there? Then I would have had to give you 10 shields of Syrian warriors' belt. But the man replied, Even if 1,000 shields were weighing out into my hands, I would not lift my hand against the king's son. In our hearing, the king commanded you and Abishai and Ittai, Protect the young man Absalom for my sake, and if I had put my life in jeopardy and nothing is hidden from the king, you would have captured distance for me. Joab said, I am not going to wait like this for you. So he took 3 javelins in his hand and plunged them into Absalom's heart, with Absalom was still alive in the oak tree. And then the Joab armor bearer surrounded Absalom and struck him and killed him. Then Joab sounded the trumpet, and the troops stopped pursuing Israel, for Joab halted them. They took Absalom, threw him into the big pit in the forest, and peeled off a large heap of the rocks over him. Meanwhile, all the Israelites fled into their homes. During his lifetime, Absalom had taken a pillar and erected it into the king's valley as a monument of himself, for he thought, I have no son to carry on my memory of my name. He named the pillar after himself, and it called Absalom's monument to this day. Now Amasa, son of Zadok, said, Let me run and take the news to the king that the Lord has delivered him from the hand of his enemies. You are not the one who to take the news today, Joab told him. You may take the news another time, but you must not do so today, because the king's son is dead. Then Joab said to the Cushites, Go, tell the king what you have seen. Cushites bowed down before Joab and ran up. Amasa, son of Zadok, again said to Joab, Come what may, please let me run behind the Cushite. But Joab replied, My son, why do you want to go? You don't have any news that will bring you a reward. He said, Come what may, I want to run. So Joab said, Run. Then Absalom ran by way of the plain and outurned the Cushite. While David was sitting between the inner and the outer gates, the watchman went up the roof of the gateway by the wall. And as he looked out, he saw a man running alone. The watchman called out to the king and reported it. The king said, "If he is alone, he must have good news." And the man came closer and closer. Then the watchman saw another man running, and he called down to the gatekeeper, "Look, another man running alone." The king said, "He must be bringing good news too." The watchman said, "It seems to me that the first one runs like Amos, son of Zadok. He's a good man," the king said. "He comes with good news." Then Amri called out to the king, "As all is well." He bowed down before the king with his face to the ground and said, "Praise be to the Lord your God. He has delivered up a man who lifted their hands against my lord the king." The king asked, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" Amnon answered, I saw great confusion just as Joab was about to send the king's servant and me, your servant, but I don't know what it was." The king said, "Stand aside and wait here." So he stepped aside and stood there. Then the Cushite arrived and said, "My lord the king, hear the good news. The Lord has delivered you today from all who rose up against you." The king asked the Cushite, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" The Cushite replied, "May the enemies of my lord, the king, and all who rise up to harm you be like that young man." The king was shaken. He went up to the room over the gateway and wept. As he went, he said, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died instead of you. Oh, Absalom, my son, my son."